I noticed the parallels. One of the questions, a few podcasts, a few people, what's the main difference between training in the South Loop? We've met in the South Loop and training back in my environment here, and I honestly said I believe it was the individual. And I believe my clientele here, I'm different. I'm dealing with a hurt individual, a individual finding themselves. I believe a lot of, and when I say individual, me, because I grew up in this area. I grew up, you know, I'm a product of my environment, just like everyone listening here. I think we are finding ourselves. We're learning how to cope and wait a minute. Yeah. If it's okay to talk, we should start talking. Yeah. We should start developing these communications, these reaching out to other people, because we begin to process all this information. I reached out to you guys because I really didn't know how to handle, as a trainer, I didn't know how to handle my clientele base, and I was dealing with more the mental side of fitness than the physical side. In the South Loop, it was physical, and I'm great at that. I'm key, but dealing with the negatives of everything, we just, you know, all the cards are stacked up against us. I didn't realize how bad, you know, our health check in our communities really are until I really started paying attention. And it hurt. It hurt to see people around me, and there's a lot of talent around us. There's a lot of good people doing good things, but for whatever reason, I've noticed a lot of self-sabotage, a lot of hurt, a lot of negative coping mechanisms. And it was just, man, this is too much. So I reached out to both of you guys, and I'm thankful for you guys coming in. Miss Vivi has a special experience in a hard field, rape crisis counselor. I'm going to bring her in now. How has fitness helped you in your professional field? Before that, describe your professional field and your background a little bit before the fitness. How's it helped you tremendously?
Describe what I do?
Just
I do so much. So pretty much we do crisis intervention for anyone who's a survivor of sexual abuse or their non-offending family members. We also have like counseling for the same. And then I'm in court, so I do court advocacy, so I follow sex crime cases from beginning to end, which takes years. So it's hard because every client's story is different. There's nothing that I have not heard, that I've not seen or heard. Like if somebody tells me something, it's like I've heard that. It's not so crazy. And I'm going on 10 years that I've been doing the work. It's a long time, so I've seen a lot of stuff. And then I have my own past traumas, similar experiences, so that can be even more triggering. I did the antidepressants, and that's when I gained crazy weight, within a year or so that I was taking them for my anxiety issues. So.
Negative experience, positive experience with the medication?
I had a negative experience. I was angry. I was always on I didn't like it. So I got off of it by myself because my doctor kept telling me she would up the meds or try to give me more, and it's not recommended that you get off it on your own. I did. And then I kind of tried every weight loss pill and all kinds of everything, and it wasn't until I came with you that I actually really lost weight, and my anxiety pretty much went from having it almost daily to I probably had 5 mild episodes in a year. It was drastic.
Pretty tremendous. Pretty. But also you did train while pregnant up to I believe 8 months, and
further,
I believe close to 8.
Before I had her.
Close to 8 to 9 months. And our discussions were always pretty unique, just because you were interested, because the mental aspects of training, the mental positivities really shine through because of the anxiety. Me hearing that, as a trainer, as a person, that makes me feel good. If you can get off some medication and actually, if training here, fitness in general can help you manage something that pills can't, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel on many levels, just because, yes, you're utilizing me, but you're also taking care of yourself. And in your field, how can you help other people if you can't take care of yourself? So I love the fitness aspect for you, because a lot of people think, yes, losing weight.
Mine was not that.
It was
I mean,
more.
That's great.
Yes.
But that's not
Also,
the main thing was controlling the anxiety.
And I wanted to make a point on that. Also, tell me about your experiences, how trauma and what you experience firsthand, secondhand, affect the human mind and body. Because the whole kind of podcast, we're realizing there's a lot of parallels between a lot of us. So your experiences have been, from our conversations, more on the, I want to say, the evils of humanity. Because some of the stuff we talked about is, I don't even want to talk about it here on, it's bad. It's some bad stuff. So you have a special perspective. From your perspective, from your truths, how does the traumas and the negativity and the environment affect the human mind from young age, adult?
I guess every case is different. Every person handles it differently, and it depends on like the kind of help and who your offender was, the help, if your family was supportive. Yeah. But everybody gets like affected by it differently. I think, like I said, it depends on the person, but it can, like, eating disorders. I had a client who used to overeat because that's just how she coped. We had somebody else who would undereat, like not eat, like at all, like make really risky, risky is the correct word, like decisions that ended in like sex work. I've had clients who've committed suicide. I have somebody who's suicidal right now that we're dealing with. So it kind of depends, like how. But a lot of them, if they don't get help right away, we usually recommend like it's on you when you're ready. We're not gonna force you, but the quicker the better. Even if their kids will have. I have a lot of parents that say, "Oh well, they're little. They're like 5. Like they don't need to. They'll forget." And I'm like, no, they will not forget. Like at some point, they're like something's gonna trigger. I've had a mom say, I went through it, I just pushed it under the rug so she could shoot. I just want her to forget about it and we'll never talk about it again. Like that's not gonna help. You have to address these things because like you're clearly your right now. Like so that means you didn't push it on the rug like you said you did. But I guess it depends. Everybody copes with it in their own. It affects them differently.
Can be very tough. So I asked Miss Mary and Miss Lisette here the same question. How do you, as a helper, help yourself? How do you protect yourself from your job, which can be difficult because you're surrounding yourself in that world? How do you, 1, protect yourself, 2, manage to stay sane? Because some of the stuff, it's very, very disturbing.
So we have a large group of volunteers, and we push self-care all the time, but in reality, I don't do it enough as I should, even though that's like the whole thing, self-care, self-care. Nobody really does it enough.
Why?
I think because you get busy and then you think that like I'm okay. Kind of like I know a lot of people who will say, well, I don't really want to go to counseling because they might tell me something's wrong with me, or I don't really want to deal with the issue, or just but I try really hard to separate it. I think I'm pretty good at separating it as much as I can. Coming here was my self-care when I was like when I was coming here like all the time. You would come sometimes at like 5. You would meet me 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and then I would go to work. So it was helpful. That was just my self-care, but like I've had issues sleeping before. Just this past birthday, it was my birthday, I was off, but I was on the phone with DCFS and I didn't agree with the decision they made, and I went off and I had a breakdown, and I shouldn't because I was technically off of work and it was my birthday, but I still had to work with that case, and it does mess with you, especially when you have like a client who commits suicide. That was probably one of the hardest, so that's hard. We try to do case processing at work, so we have an outside person who comes in and does case processing with us and how we feel about our cases, but it's like once a month. So everything you're dealing with all day it's not enough. But just trying to separate it as much as you can. But now I'm a mom, so like I'm super extra now with my baby. Like I don't trust no one because of work. I've seen stuff that other people don't. So I know like no, like I'm very like protective, extra protective.
Ms. Vivi has an interesting aspect because of her the such negativity, but to me you're such a positive person, and all you guys, I think we need more people like you guys, because unselfishly all of you guys want to help. How can we help a community that sometimes I feel doesn't want to invest in themselves, that might not see the positivity of fitness, or that might not know they themselves might be going through a trauma or incident they might not realize. The CPU might be a little bit off. How can we help from your truths?
I guess like first and foremost, like I think it's to let people know that it's okay to not be okay, number one. I think we just live in a society where everyone just feels so much pressure to be perfect or to have it all together, and you know, and the reality is that's not always the case, and sometimes things happen, you know, sometimes things have happened, and it's okay to not be okay about it. Like there's just some really ugly evils in this world that are outside of our control. So it's okay to not be okay. It takes time.
It takes time. I believe it's very hard for people even to say that.
It takes
to
time.
muster up the courage to even say, like, man, I might not be all right.
and the reality is that, and I know that sometimes people hear like, oh, time heals all.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't. And the thing is, like, we have to be able to learn to accept that. That, you know, because there are horrible things that happen in life. And it's just kind of like finding acceptance to know that, number one, like, you know, life's not going to be perfect. Sometimes I'm not going to feel my best, and that's okay. And, you know, time may not heal all, you know, that I'm dealing with. But, like, wanting and having and keeping the will to kind of, like, move forward. We talked a lot about trauma. We talked a lot about the negative effects of trauma, but there was one thing that I know I didn't mention, was that when we think about, especially like the adverse childhood experiences, things that we experienced growing up, and even though the higher our score is, the more negative outcome, but that's only if and only when you don't deal with those things.
If you allow it.
So that's for undealt and unprocessed traumas. Because the truth is that when you do deal with what's happening in your world and you process it, you know, the outcome is better. But one has to be ready. And that can take some time.
Take a long time.
That can take some time.
Miss Mary? Oh, sorry, you have any?
No.
Miss Mary?
What she said. No.
Yeah, don't you do that. Don't you do that.
No, I really think what both of these ladies have talked about is there has to be personal buy-in, and that's hard. You cannot do that for somebody. But what you can do is give them open spaces and safe spaces to talk and to process or to share in stories, but also like to see themselves in that space. So normalizing fitness too, right? Like, I don't know, growing up, I thought fitness was for me. You know, like that wasn't something that was on my priority list. And as I've gotten older and I'm like, oh, people like me can do this stuff? Like, people who look like me or people who are in the same positions as me, like, okay, let me try it, right? Same thing with mental health. Like, if I share with a friend, hey, I'm in therapy, hey, I'm getting help for this, and they're like, oh shit, if you're going to, maybe I should try therapy, right? And like, same thing, we see the results that we get from working out, and that inspires others. And I think just using that to inspire people across the board about being open and honest about how we are positively impacted by what we're doing.
Miss Vivi, oh, how can we help the community, our surroundings, our environment?
Educating them. Just educating them on
Education.
that it's okay to get help. My job actually comes out to schools to teach about this kind of stuff. They go to Lizette's school.
They come to my school, yes they do.
My job works with her because a lot of kids aren't taught like these things.
If
Parents
we're not
aren't
taught,
parents
we don't
aren't
know.
taught these things. So educating people on like that it's okay to get help, what kind of help you can get. You can't say I don't have the money because a lot of services are free. My services are all free. And my job, everything we do in our agency is free. We can find you free counseling that's general, so you can't use that as an excuse. There's bilingual if you need it. That's not an excuse either. That's out there. So just educating people on why it's helpful.
A lot of my clientele, when they first start their journey, they meet a lot of resistance, and the majority is from family. So if someone's trying to eat better and change their life, and they meet a lot of resistance, and they get made fun of, and oh, you don't need to eat. Oh, Tony doesn't know what he's doing. You should just do this. There's a lot of negativity around maybe change, maybe positivity. In your field, do you guys see that? And also, how do you guys deal with that negativity? Because I'm trying to do good, and I believe in a parallel, you guys are trying to do good. Do you guys see that negativity? Or maybe it's just me in my field. And I'm asking you guys, who counsels the counselors? My counselors are here. Do you guys see that negativity? I see it a lot online. There's a lot of negativity if, you know, someone's trying to promote their personal fitness journey. I love it. The new year, new me. I love it because it's change, it's positive growth. It's someone's trying to better their situation. And I see a lot of bashing. And I dislike that. As counselors, what should I do? Should I address that negativity, leave it alone, or just allow that positivity to shine through? Or we don't have an answer yet?
I mean, I feel like a lot of times the way that people respond is their defense mechanisms. It's like everyone is always using defense mechanisms, like minimizing, using humor, making fun is a very common one. Something that I know you and I have talked about is not taking things personal. Nothing is ever about us. People project all the time their own insecurities. I think a lot of times when people do like minimize or put other people down, that is a bigger reflection on how they feel about themselves. And that's the reality, is that we live in the world where it's like, it's not a safe space to be vulnerable. So, you know what, I'm gonna put you down and bring you down because that's where I'm at right now. So by putting you down, like, that's gonna make me feel better.
Hurt people.
Hurt people. And this is, you know, why a lot of times bullying is a big problem in schools, and, you know, just people are mean. And it is hard to deal with yourself. I think that's probably the most difficult thing to do, is to be vulnerable and honest with yourself. And to admit, like I have some things that I need to work on.
I think
I struggle with it.
I think we all do.
And we all, and the reality is we all have that. Like no one's perfect. Everyone is a work in progress.
Yeah.
Everyone is, striving to, change, and change is hard. Change is scary.
Yeah.
And I think when
It's
people
the
start
unknown.
to change, it is the unknown, especially when when you live in a toxic environment. That's your norm. Anything outside that creates anxiety. And it's scary.
Yeah.
And it's like I mentioned, like
Interesting.
when we think about trauma, you're talking about, kids and adults who are constantly in this fight and flight. Everything is a threat. And they would rather, and when you talk about self-sabotage, they would rather be in control of the misery versus having something else come out of nowhere and they lose control again.
That is the devil you know versus the devil you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like I think it was Bruce Perry, who is a psychiatrist and has done a lot of research on childhood trauma, and he wrote this book, The Boy That Was Raised as a Dog, who has a lot of different cases of children who've experienced extreme neglect and extreme abuse. And in that book, he quotes that, that kids prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. And that is why you see in a lot of cases, for example, like in schools, you can have a child who, is dealing with a lot. They may be a big discipline problem, and then all of a sudden they're doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden they do something, provoke something, and get in a fight or something, and then it's just like everyone's like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, why is this child, like, they were doing so good. But that's the trauma.
Seeping out.
That's the, oh my God, things are too good. And that's how we all
don't
have,
deserve it.
we all have that mindset. We don't feel like we deserve it, like things are going too well. Something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And everyone says it, like, oh my God, like, I've been like happy lately. Something horrible is going to happen. And then we do something
To make it happen.
to make it happen.
My perspective, if you're constantly focused on something, whether it's good or bad, that's
you're
your
gonna
environment.
see. Yeah.
That's what you're gonna attract. That's your vibe.
Yeah.
That's your vibe is your tribe, right?
And it's hard to look at things through a different like perspective when that's all you know.
I think something like what you talk about, like the safe space, because you're right, like the world is not safe. And I think we throw out these terms of like support and all these things, but we don't genuinely mean them. So people who want
I support you.
yeah,
From a
right?
distance.
Exactly. Or like, I'm not willing to actually be in it with you.
Yeah.
And I think we need a lot more of that. We need a lot more people who we can show them that a safe space can be safe because I choosing to make it safe for you, right? Like I care about you enough to do this. And I don't know if we feel that as humans all the time.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been traumatized by caregivers, by people you're close to, by the people who are supposed to protect you. If they are the ones already breaking that relationship, then nobody else who doesn't, like, why would anybody else do anything different?
When people find out either when I do or we talk about our services, people, like just specifically to sexual assault, rape, people are like, oh shit, like it's more of a, people react differently. I've had people say like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Like, that's like, they don't want to, we passed out call cards and somebody said, I don't support that.
Ooh.
And they walk away. Like, so I
Yeah.
think we get it from a different,
Yeah.
it's either like, oh, you do that, or it's like, well, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
And that also can be somebody who dealt with that, who maybe doesn't want to touch on that.
Yeah.
I get a lot, even dating, I get people when they find out what I do, they're like, oh,
Oh.
okay, like, just because of the topic. For me personally, like, that's different. Like, we get a lot of, you know, we don't like want to touch that. Or they'll start asking you, like, well, I mean, it's usually their fault, they be lying, right? Like, so they go into those kind of topics. So I go back to the whole educating thing, because it's like, but that's what I get. Different
That's your
from what they
truth.
see.
Yeah. That's your perspective.
It's just what